Nearly 500,000 of them roll down American roads every single school day. And everyone is the exact same shade of yellow. Not red, not white, yellow. Pull up beside one anywhere, Maine, Texas, Oregon, and it's the identical color. Not similar, identical. A precise, official, federally cataloged shade of yellow-orange. You've seen it 10,000 times. You probably rode one. And you never asked why. Why yellow? Who decided? The answer is a forgotten man and paint chips on a wall. Here's the strange thing. That color isn't a suggestion. It isn't roughly yellow. It has a name, National School Bus Glossy Yellow, and a federal code number. A bus body painted in any state matches the very same official chip, on purpose. Think about how unusual that is. There's no federal law on what color your car is. No law making fire trucks, or taxis, or mailboxes one exact shade. But school buses? Locked. So somebody somewhere decided, picked this exact yellow-orange and got an entire nation to agree. And they didn't choose it because it's cheerful, or because children happen to like it. They chose it for a reason rooted in danger, in dead children, and in your own eyes. To understand the color, you first have to understand why the school bus exists at all. Because for most of American history, there was no school bus. There was no need for one. Children just walked down the lane, across a field, to a little school you could see from home. How did we get from there to 500,000 yellow buses? Go back about a century. It's a story about closing schools, a dead horse, a blizzard, and one stubborn professor. And it ends with a color so familiar you stopped seeing it a long time ago. A color that, by the time we're done, you will never look at the same way again. So let's start where the buses came from. Out in the American countryside, around 1900. Around the year 1900, America had something like 200,000 one-room schoolhouses. One for nearly every farm community. One room, one teacher, every grade, all within walking distance. It was small and personal, and it worked, as long as everybody lived close by. But reformers wanted more. Real grades, trained teachers, libraries, things a single room couldn't give. So, slowly, they began closing the little schools and merging them into bigger, consolidated ones. Better schools, but farther away. Now a child might live 5, even 10 miles from class. Far too far to walk. And if you consolidate the schools, you have to move the children. At first, towns moved them however they could, which brings us to a wonderful old word. The kid hack. A hack was a horse-drawn carriage. A kid hack hauled farm children to school. Picture a plain wooden wagon, benches down the sides, a roof on top, pulled by one horse. It packed in maybe 20 children, bouncing down dirt roads through every kind of weather. And here's a small detail that survived absolutely everything. The kid hack loaded from the back. Why the back? So children climbing aboard wouldn't startle the horse standing in the harness up front. That one choice, made back in the 1890s, is why your school bus still has a rear door today. A horse that died over a century ago is the reason for the emergency exit at the back. Then the engine arrived, and folks did the obvious thing. They bolted the wagon onto a truck. An Indiana company called Wayne had built a horse-drawn school wagon as early as 1892. A Georgia Ford dealer named Albert Luce mounted a wooden bus body on a Model T in 1927. It rattled half apart on Georgia's rough roads, so he rebuilt it in steel and named it Bluebird. That company still builds school buses today, but back then, these machines shared one big problem. There were no rules, none at all. No standard for how a school bus should be built or painted. Every town simply did its own thing. The buses came in every size, every shape, every color imaginable. Some were real, purpose-built buses. Many were just farm trucks with a few benches thrown in back. Windows were canvas flaps. Heaters were a luxury few could afford. Safety was, mostly, a prayer. One school district proudly painted its buses red, white, and blue to make the children patriotic. It sounds sweet. But picture it at dawn, in fog. Red, white, and blue is camouflage. A man we're about to meet said exactly that. Well-meaning, and far too hard to see. In one Kansas district, children were still being hauled to school in horse-drawn wheat wagons. And with no rules, and these flimsy machines, children paid the price, sometimes the worst price. March 1931, near Towner, Colorado. The school bus was a 1929 Chevrolet truck. A blizzard hit. The truck slid off into a ditch. No heater. Several windows missing, the gaps stuffed with cardboard. 20 children were trapped inside in 20 below cold, with 70-mile-an-hour wind tearing at it. They were stranded there more than 30 hours. 5 of those children, and the driver, froze to death. It is still remembered as one of the darkest days in the history of getting kids to school. 7 years later, a foggy morning in South Jordan, Utah, December of 1938, a school bus eased onto a railroad crossing it simply could not see, into the side of a freight train. It remains the worst bus and train crash in American history. More than 24 lives gone in seconds. That one forced a rule we still follow. Every bus must stop and look at every crossing. And it happened just months before our story turns. The tragedies were piling up, year after year. Improvised trucks, no standards, children dying. By the late 1930s, something finally had to give. The country didn't just need more buses. It needed one safe standard bus, the same everywhere. And standards like that don't write themselves. It needed somebody to go out and build it. That somebody was not a senator, not a car maker, not a general. He was a college professor. His name was Frank Cyr, a farm boy born in Nebraska in 1900 who became a professor in New York. He taught rural education at Teachers College, Columbia University, and he cared deeply about country kids. In 1937, Cyr did something almost nobody had bothered to do. He studied how children got to school. He looked across state after state, gathering the real picture. And what he found alarmed him. Trucks, wagons, buses in every color of the rainbow, wheat wagons, no safety, and no sense to it. But Cyr also saw a second problem, quieter, and just as important. The factories were stuck too. Every district demanded a slightly different bus, so no company could build them efficiently in bulk. A bus built for Ohio wouldn't meet the rules over in Iowa. Everything was custom. Everything cost more. Cyr saw it plainly. The chaos was killing children and wasting money, and one fix could solve both. Get everybody in one room, every state, every manufacturer, and agree, at last, on a single standard bus. It sounds simple. It had never once been done. 48 states, each setting aside its own way. To pull off something that big, Cyr needed 2 things. He needed money and a neutral table. He found both behind one of the most famous names in America, the Rockefellers. The Rockefeller philanthropy, through a group called the General Education Board, handed Cyr a grant, $5,000, worth nearly $100,000 today, enough to gather the whole country together. And so, in April of 1939, they came to Teachers College in New York City. Transportation officials from all 48 states, the bus makers, Bluebird, Ford, Chevrolet, Dodge, and, crucially, the paint people. Chemists from DuPont and from Pittsburgh Paints. Hold on to them. For 7 straight days, this one room did something quietly radical. It built the American school bus. Not a bus. The bus. They wrote 44 standards, covering very nearly every inch of the thing. How long the body could be, how high the ceiling, how wide the aisle, the doors, the seats. Dull, vital details, the kind of standards that go on quietly saving lives for the next 80 years. And then they reached the one question that would outlast all the others. What color should it be? This is the moment, the one that put the yellow on the bus. And it is wonderfully, humbly simple. Cyr took strips of paint, dozens of them, and hung them up around the walls of that room. Every shade you can picture. Pale lemon yellow at one end, deep orange red at the other. And then he simply let the delegates argue. For days, men walked the room, studying the colors. Which color could a tired driver spot first at dawn? Which one held black letters the best? Which color, in fog, in falling snow, at the very edge of your vision, refused to be missed? Slowly, the field narrowed. Away from the reds, away from white, toward the yellows and oranges, and finally, down to 3 nearly identical shades of yellow-orange. From those 3, they chose one. That was it. No grand ceremony. A few paint strips, a week of arguing, and a single choice. A choice that would go on to color the childhood of nearly every American who came after. They wrote it all into a slim manual, minimum standards for school buses, and sent it out. The bus had a shape now, a set of rules, and for the first time, a single, deliberate color. But the deepest question was still hanging in that room. Of every color on earth, why yellow? Why did the room keep drifting toward that yellow-orange and away from everything else? The answer is the human eye. and the strange hours when a school bus is actually on the road. Think about when buses run. Early morning, often before the sun has truly come up, and late afternoon, sliding into dusk, the half-light, the exact times your eyes work their worst. In that gloom, you need a color that grabs your attention before your brain has even caught up. And it turns out yellow does that better than almost anything else we know of, especially out at the edges, in your peripheral vision, the corner of your eye. That edge of your sight is where you catch sudden danger first, and it is most sensitive to yellow. By one common measure, the eye picks up yellow about 1.25 times better than red. That sliver of a second, at the edge of sight, can be the whole difference between stopping and not. There is a second reason, just as clever. The black letters. The word school on the bus's side. Black lettering on that yellow-orange is the easiest thing to read in poor light. Maximum contrast. So the color does two jobs at once. It screams, "Look here," and it makes the warning readable. The professor, Frank Cyr, always insisted the winning shade was really more orange than yellow, and he was right. It's tuned to a band of light your eye happens to catch faster than nearly any other. This is the same reason caution signs are yellow, and hazard tape, and the line down the road. Yellow and black is the oldest warning in all of nature, the wasp, the hornet. Your eye obeys it. The 1939 room couldn't measure any of this. They had no charts of wavelengths or cone cells. They just hung the colors on the wall, and the yellow won, because the human eye told them so. They gave their winner an official name, National School Bus Chrome. Later, National School Bus Glossy Yellow. A federal color, with its own code number, so any paint shop in the country could match it exactly. One precise yellow-orange, chosen by eye, in a room, in 1939, and still rolling right past you today. But here is the part that should genuinely surprise you. Nobody was ever forced to use any of it. There was no federal law. To this day, there is still no law requiring a school bus to be yellow. The 44 standards and the color were only ever a recommendation, a strong, careful suggestion. Cyr's conference couldn't command a single town. It could only say, "Here is the safest way, please." Every state was free to ignore the whole thing, keep its red buses, its trucks, its own proud way. And yet, one by one, state after state, they all said yes. They all painted the buses yellow. Why would they? Why would proud, independent states bow to one professor's chart of paint chips? Because of a simple, powerful truth hiding inside the idea. A warning only works if it is shared. A yellow bus means children are stop only if every bus is yellow. One odd color breaks the whole code. The entire point is that a driver, anywhere in the country, instantly knows. That yellow means kids. So the states didn't fall in line because Washington made them. They did it because it only works together. A mere recommendation quietly became a law of habit. Stronger, in the end, than most real laws. And that room in New York never truly closed. They have met again every few years ever since, refining the standards, adding the flashing red lights, the swing-out stop arm, the laws that freeze traffic. They gathered again just last year, the same quiet conference, 85 years on, still guarding the bus. So what did all of that buy? The week of arguing, the color, the 85 years of careful rules? It bought the single safest ride in America, by a wide, almost unbelievable margin. A child is roughly 8 times safer riding a school bus than riding in the family car. Put another way, they are around 70 times more likely to reach school safely by bus than by car. Less than 1% of all the nation's traffic deaths involve a child on school transportation. That big yellow bus is, by the cold numbers, the most regulated and the safest vehicle on the road. And there's a strange, revealing twist buried down in the crash data. It's worth sitting with. When people do die in a school bus crash, most of them aren't riding the bus at all. Around 7 in 10 are in the other vehicle, the car that ran into that big wall of steel. The bus is so safe for the children inside that the danger flips outward onto everyone else. The real risk to kids isn't the riding. It's those few steps outside, the danger zone at the curb, and the drivers who, more than 40 million times a year, illegally blow past a stopped school bus, which is the whole reason the color, the lights, and the laws all scream the very same word: stop. Today, that exact yellow rolls along on about 480,000 buses, coast to coast. carrying more than 25 million American children to school every single day. It is, very quietly, the largest form of public transportation in the entire United States. Bigger than every subway, every commuter train, and every airline in the country combined. So the next time a big yellow bus stops in front of you, and its red lights flash, and you wait, look, for just a second, at the color. Because it isn't random, and it isn't a tradition. It isn't somebody's favorite crayon. It is engineering, hiding in plain sight, painted on steel. It's the exact band of light the human eye catches first, in the half-dark when children travel. It's a warning, written in a color, that an entire country quietly agreed to read the same way. And it all came from one room in 1939, a Rockefeller grant, and paint chips tacked to a wall. From a professor named Frank Cyr, the father of the yellow school bus, a name almost no one remembers. He didn't invent a machine, he didn't win a war, he just got everyone to agree on a color. And in doing that, he may have saved more American children than almost anyone in our history. That's the quiet truth of the yellow. It was a choice. A careful, deliberate, life-saving choice. Made on purpose, by people, for a reason, like so much of the country you live in. Now you know why the bus is yellow, and you won't ever quite see that color the same way again. I'll see you next time.